Morning sunlight spilled through the rice in the threadbare curtains, illuminating every dust particle drifting through the cramped living room. Marcus Sullivan's eyes opened slowly, his body protesting against the worn sofa cushions that had served as his bed. Again. The springs dug into his ribs the same way they had for 3 years now, ever since he'd given Emma the only bedroom in their rental house. A father's choice, the only choice. He sat up, vertebrae cracking in sequence, and reached for his phone on the coffee table. The screen showed 6:47 a.m. and a bank balance that made his stomach clench. $247.18. Rent was due in 11 days, $1,200 he didn't have. The eviction notice, folded and hidden in his toolbox so Emma wouldn't see it, gave them 30 days. Less than that now. A sound cut through his calculations. The clink of ceramic against wood. Soft footsteps padding across linoleum. Someone was in his kitchen. Marcus's pulse spiked. His hand instinctively reached for the tire iron he kept beside the sofa. Portland wasn't the safest neighborhood, and a single father learned to prepare for the worst. But then the smell hit him. Fresh coffee. Not the instant powder he had been rationing, but real brewed coffee, rich and dark. He turned his head toward the kitchen doorway. A woman stood there, backlit by the early light filtering through the small window above the sink. Her hair fell in dark, sleep-tousled waves past her shoulders. She wore a white dress shirt. His white dress shirt, the only one he owned, the one he draped over the chair last night to air out before this morning's job interview at the warehouse. The shirt hung loose on her frame, the sleeves rolled up, the hem reaching mid-thigh. She moved with unself-conscious grace, pouring coffee into two mismatched mugs like she'd done this 1,000 times before. Marcus's throat went dry. His mind scrambled backward through the previous night, grasping for memories that felt slippery and incomplete. Rain. There had been rain. Torrential rain and lightning that split the sky open. He'd been driving home from the Johnsons' place after fixing their water heater, exhausted, his hands still smelling of pipe dope and rust. The roads had been flooding, water rushing across the asphalt in sheets. And then, the woman turned. Her face came into focus. High cheekbones, full lips, dark eyes that assessed him with an unsettling mixture of amusement and curiosity. She lifted one of the mugs in a small salute. Her voice came out low and smooth, like aged whiskey. "Morning. I was wondering when you'd wake up." Marcus found his own voice somewhere in his chest, rough from sleep and confusion. "Who are you?" She set the mug down on the counter with deliberate slowness, each movement calculated to draw out the moment. Her lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. "You really don't remember anything from last night?" The question landed like a challenge. Marcus ran a hand through his hair, trying to shake off the phone. Fragments of memory began to surface. A car, a luxury sedan, dark paint, crumpled against a tree, smoke rising from the hood. The driver's side door jammed. A woman's face through the window, blood on her forehead, eyes wide with terror. He'd stopped. Of course he'd stopped. His truck had skidded on the wet road, but he'd made it stop, made it to the wreck before the flames reached the cabin. He'd smashed the window with his elbow, glass embedding in his skin, blood mixing with rainwater. He'd cut the seatbelt with a pocket knife and pulled her free just as the engine caught fire. The woman in his kitchen was that woman. The one he'd carried through the storm to his truck. The one who'd been shaking so violently he'd worried about shock. The hospital had been too far, the roads too flooded. He'd brought her here to his house because it was close and dry, and she'd needed somewhere safe. He'd put her in his bed, Emma's too small, the sofa too uncomfortable for an injured person, and he'd taken the couch. Standard emergency protocol, nothing more. Except now she was standing in his kitchen wearing his shirt, and the way she looked at him suggested this was anything but standard. Marcus pushed himself to his feet, immediately aware of how he must look. Worn gym shorts, a faded Seahawks t-shirt with a hole near the collar, 3 days of stowable, hair sticking up at odd angles. He looked like what he was, a man barely holding on. The words came out sharper than intended. "You're wearing my shirt." She glanced down at herself, then back up at him with those dark eyes. "You left me lying in a soaking wetsuit. I found this." A pause, perfectly timed. Hope you don't mind. Mind? His only interview shirt, the one he'd pressed yesterday afternoon, the one he'd need in 3 hours when he tried to convince a warehouse manager he was worth $15 an hour in benefits. But looking at her now, at the way the morning light caught in her hair, at the purple bruise along her temple where the window had struck her, he couldn't bring himself to care about the shirt. He opened his mouth to respond, but a new sound cut him off. Small feet padding down the short hallway. A yawn, high and childish. Emma appeared in the living room doorway, her blonde hair a wild halo around her face. Her blue eyes, Sarah's eyes, still heavy with sleep. She wore her favorite pajamas, the ones with cartoon robots that were getting too small but that she refused to give up. 7 years old and stubborn as hell. Marcus had no idea where she got that from. Emma's gaze locked onto the stranger in the kitchen. Her eyes went wide, but not with fear. With that particular brand of curiosity that had gotten her into trouble more than once. Who are you? The woman set down her coffee mug and crossed the small distance to the living room. She lowered herself into a crouch, bringing herself to Emma's eye level, a gesture that spoke of practice and patience. Just someone your dad helped last night. Emma looked from the woman to Marcus, then back again. Her expression turned thoughtful, calculating. Are you hurt? The woman touched the bruise on her temple with 2 fingers. I was. Your dad fixed that. Emma nodded, satisfied with this explanation, then launched into her morning routine without missing a beat. Okay, I need to get ready for school. Dad, can I have the strawberry cereal? Marcus felt reality snap back into place. School, breakfast, the warehouse interview, his normal life, interrupted by whatever this situation was. We're out of strawberry, kiddo. Cheerios today. Emma's face fell for a moment, but she recovered quickly. Another thing she'd learned too early, how to hide disappointment. Okay, Cheerios are fine. She disappeared back down the hallway, leaving Marcus alone with the woman who'd made herself at home in his kitchen. The silence stretched between them, charged with questions neither seemed ready to ask. The woman straightened to her full height, which brought the top of her head to about his chin. She crossed her arms, the gesture pulling his shirt tighter across her shoulders. I should explain. Marcus held up a hand. You don't owe me an explanation. You were in an accident. I helped. That's it. Something flickered across her face, surprise maybe, or skepticism. Most men would want more than that. The statement hung in the air between them, loaded with implications Marcus didn't want to unpack. He moved past her into the kitchen, needing something to do with his hands, needing distance. He picked up the coffee pot she'd made, poured himself a cup in one of the chipped mugs that had survived his marriage and the aftermath. The coffee was good, too good, the kind that came from beans you ground yourself, not the pre-ground store brand he bought when he could afford it. He turned back to find her watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. Where'd this coffee come from? She gestured toward his small kitchen table where a paper bag sat, the kind from expensive cafes that Marcus never entered. I had my assistant drop off some things this morning. Coffee, breakfast pastries, a change of clothes. A beat. And I wanted to thank you properly. Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. Assistant. Morning delivery. This woman had resources, the kind that could arrange for fresh coffee and designer pastries before 7 a.m. on a Thursday. The kind that didn't match with his peeling linoleum and thrift store furniture. He set the mug down harder than necessary. You could have just left. Her eyes narrowed slightly, the first crack in her composed exterior. Would you have preferred that? Honest answer? He didn't know. Part of him, the part that remembered Sarah, that still woke up reaching for her 3 years after the cancer had taken her, that felt guilty for noticing this stranger's legs in his shirt, wanted this woman gone, wanted his small, struggling, predictable life back. But another part, a part he'd thought died with his wife, felt something stir at the challenge in this woman's voice. Emma's voice calling from her bedroom. Odd! I can't find my blue backpack. Marcus grabbed the lifeline. Check under your bed. A pause, then, found it. The woman smiled at that, a real smile this time, not the calculated curve from before. It transformed her face, softened the sharp edges. She's wonderful. Marcus felt his defenses shift slightly. Anyone who saw Emma clearly, who recognized what an amazing kid she was, couldn't be all bad. She's everything. The woman's smile faded into something more complex, something that looked like longing or regret or both. How old? The answer came automatically. 7, second grade, straight A's, even though she's in the gifted program and the work is supposed to be harder. Pride bled through every word, impossible to contain. The woman nodded slowly, still watching Emma's closed bedroom door. You're doing this alone? The question was gentle, but it still felt like a knife between the ribs. Marcus's hand tightened on his coffee mug. That's none of your business. She held up both hands in surrender. You're right, I'm sorry. But she didn't look sorry. She looked like someone assembling pieces of a puzzle, figuring out how they fit together. Emma emerged from her bedroom fully dressed in jeans and a t-shirt that advertised a science museum Marcus had never been able to afford to take her to. She'd brushed her hair into a ponytail, neat and efficient. She grabbed her backpack from where she dropped it and slung it over her shoulders, then stopped in front of the woman, tilting her head up to meet her eyes. What's your name? The woman hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Victoria. Emma tested the name silently, lips moving, then nodded. Okay, bye, Victoria. I hope you feel better. She turned to Marcus. Dad, we need to leave in 10 minutes or I'll be late for the science fair setup. Marcus checked his phone, 7:03. She was right, and his interview was at 9:30, which meant he needed to drop Emma at school, get home, shower, change into his only dress shirt, the one Victoria was wearing. She must have seen something change in his face because her expression shifted, became more alert. What's wrong? Marcus shook his head. Nothing, I'll figure it out. He looked at Emma. Go brush your teeth. I'll make you toast to eat in the truck. Emma disappeared into the bathroom. The water ran. Marcus moved mechanically through the morning routine, pulling bread from the nearly empty cupboard, sliding 2 slices into the toaster that only worked if you held the lever down manually. He could feel Victoria's eyes on him, assessing, calculating. The toast popped up. He spread the last scraping of peanut butter from the brine across both pieces, cut them into triangles the way Emma liked, wrapped them in a paper towel. His mind was already moving ahead, trying to solve the equation. Drop Emma at school by 7:30, home by 7:45, shower by 8 o'clock. But what would he wear? He had work clothes, jeans and flannel shirts stained with grease and drywall dust. He had this Seahawks shirt and 2 others like it. He had nothing appropriate for a job interview at a place that required business casual. Victoria's voice cut into his spiral. You have somewhere to be. It wasn't a question. Marcus didn't bother denying it. Job interview, warehouse supervisor position, 9:30. Her gaze dropped to the shirt she was wearing, then back to his face. Understanding dawned. This is your interview shirt. Marcus busied himself wrapping the toast, not meeting her eyes. It's fine, I'll wear something else. The lie sat between them, obvious and pathetic. They both knew he didn't have something else. Not anything that would help him get a job that paid enough to keep Emma fed and housed. Victoria crossed the kitchen in 3 strides. She began unbuttoning the shirt, quick and efficient, no hesitation. Marcus's brain short-circuited for a moment before he realized she wore a black tank top underneath, probably part of whatever outfit she'd had on the night before. She stripped off his shirt and held it out to him. Take it. Marcus didn't reach for it. You need something to wear. She glanced down at herself, the tank top, the fact that her suit pants from last night were probably still damp, then shrugged. I'll call my assistant. She can bring something within 20 minutes. The casual way she said it, the assumption that help was always a phone call away, reminded Marcus of the gulf between them. People like her didn't understand what it meant to have exactly one of something. One interview shirt, one chance, one shot at making rent before the eviction notice became reality. He pushed the shirt back toward her. Keep it, I'll manage. Her jaw set in a way that suggested she wasn't used to people refusing her help. Don't be stubborn. Something hot flared in Marcus's chest. I'm not being stubborn. I'm being... He cut himself off, aware of Emma just down the hall, aware that he didn't want his daughter to hear him lose his temper with a stranger. Look, you were in an accident. You're injured. You're still recovering. I'm not taking the shirt off your back so I can go beg for a job that probably won't pay enough anyway. Victoria stared at him like he'd spoken a language she didn't understand. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I'm offering to help. Marcus turned away, focusing on Emma's toast, on anything that wasn't the confused expression on this woman's face. I know and I appreciate it, but no. Emma emerged from the bathroom, face washed, teeth brushed, backpack secured. She looked between Marcus and Victoria, her kid radar picking up the tension. Is everything okay? Marcus forced a smile. Everything's fine, kiddo. Ready to go? Emma nodded but kept glancing at Victoria, who still held the shirt in one hand, looking lost in a way that seemed fundamentally wrong for someone so clearly used to being in control. Victoria cleared her throat. Marcus, wait. She stepped closer, lowering her voice so Emma wouldn't overhear. At least let me give you money for... The words hit him like a slap. Marcus felt his entire body go rigid. He turned to face her fully, and whatever she saw in his expression made her take half a step back. His voice came out low and hard. I don't want your money. Victoria blinked. I'm trying to help. Marcus leaned in slightly, making sure she heard every word. I didn't pull you out of that car for a reward. I did it because you were a person who needed help, and I was there. That's it. That's the entire story. He straightened, putting distance between them. If you want to thank me, the words are thank you. That's all I need. A color rose in Victoria's cheeks. Embarrassment or anger. Marcus couldn't tell. I wasn't trying to... Marcus grabbed Emma's hand and his truck keys from the hook by the door. We have to go. Lock the door when you leave. He was halfway to the truck. Emma buckled in the passenger seat before his hand stopped shaking. The elementary school parking lot was chaos as always. Marcus navigated his truck, a '98 Ford Ranger with 240,000 miles and a passenger door that sometimes didn't open, through the maze of minivans and SUVs. He pulled into the drop-off zone, and Emma gathered her backpack ready to bolt. Marcus caught her hand. Hey, have a great day at school. Knock 'em dead at the science fair. Emma's face lit up. My volcano is going to be the best one. I used the baking soda ratio you showed me. She paused, biting her lip. Dad? Marcus felt his chest tighten at her serious expression. What's up, kiddo? Emma glanced around, making sure no one was listening. We're okay, right? Like, we're going to be okay? The question gutted him. 7 years old and already worrying about money, about stability, about things no kid should have to think about. Marcus pulled her into a hug, probably embarrassing her in front of her friends, but not caring. We're going to be fine. I promise. Emma hugged him back fiercely, then pulled away and wiped her eyes quickly. Okay. Love you. Marcus swallowed hard. Love you too, kiddo. So much. She jumped out of the truck and ran toward the school entrance where her friends were gathered. Marcus watched until she disappeared inside, then pulled out of the parking lot, his mind already spinning through options. He could wear his least-stained work shirt. He could stop at a thrift store, see if they had anything in his size that didn't look too worn. He could... His phone buzzed. Unknown number. Marcus almost didn't answer, but the thought that it might be about the interview made him slide the call open. Hello. A woman's voice, crisp and professional. Good morning, Mr. Sullivan. This is Andrea Chen, executive assistant to Victoria Sterling. Ms. Sterling asked me to call you. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. Look, I already told her. Andrea continued as if he hadn't spoken. Ms. Sterling has arranged for a suit to be delivered to your address within the hour. Navy blue, your size, shirt and tie included. She wanted me to assure you this is not a gift, but a loan. You can return it whenever convenient. Marcus pulled the truck over to the curb, too frustrated to drive and talk. I don't need... Andrea's voice remained perfectly pleasant and utterly implacable. Ms. Sterling was quite insistent, Mr. Sullivan. She also wanted me to inform you that a significant accident occurred last night, and she would consider it a personal favor if you allowed her to do this one small thing. Her exact words were, tell him stubborn men rarely get second chances at first impressions. Despite himself, Marcus felt a laugh bubble up. This woman, Victoria, was relentless. And maybe she had a point. The warehouse job wasn't his dream, but it was steady work with benefits. Emma needed him to have benefits. Fine, I'll take the loan. Andrea's approval came through clearly. Excellent. The delivery will arrive by 8:15. Oh, and Mr. Sullivan, good luck with your interview. The call ended before Marcus could respond. He sat in his truck, watching morning traffic crawl past, and tried to figure out whether he'd just been helped or manipulated. Both, probably. Victoria Sterling, whoever she was, whatever she wanted, didn't seem like the type to take no for an answer. His phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert, the kind he usually ignored. But the headline caught his eye. CEO Victoria Sterling returns to work after near-fatal accident. Marcus's blood went cold. CEO? He clicked the article and his phone screen filled with a professional photo of the woman who'd been standing in his kitchen an hour ago. Victoria Sterling, 34, Chief Executive Officer of Sterling Dynamics, a technology company Marcus had never heard of, but that apparently employed 3,000 people across 5 states. Net worth estimated at $800 million. Named one of Oregon's most influential business leaders 3 years running. Featured in Forbes, Fortune, Bloomberg. The article detailed last night's accident in clinical terms. Severe thunderstorm, late-night drive home from a board meeting, car hydroplaned on Interstate 84, struck a tree. Emergency services had arrived to find the vehicle already evacuated, but the CEO refused medical transport, insisting she was fine despite visible injuries. She'd returned to work this morning, the article noted, because Ms. Sterling doesn't believe in excuses or delays. A quote from Victoria herself appeared near the end. Someone helped me last night. I won't reveal his name because he explicitly asked for privacy, but I want him to know, the quote continued, he showed me more grace and dignity in 10 minutes than I've seen in 10 years of business. He refused payment. He refused recognition. He simply did what needed doing. That kind of character is rare and should be valued. Marcus read the quote 3 times. Then he read it again. The woman he'd rescued, the woman who'd made coffee in his kitchen, the woman currently borrowing his only dress shirt, she was worth $800 million. And she'd offered him money, and he'd rejected it. Like an idiot. No, not like an idiot. Like a man with principles. There was a difference, even if the difference left you with $247 in the bank and an eviction notice in your toolbox. Marcus started the truck and headed home, his mind churning. A suit would be waiting. A borrowed suit from a billionaire CEO who'd somehow decided he was worth her attention. The thought made him uncomfortable in a way he couldn't quite articulate. Help was one thing, charity was another. And he'd learned a long time ago that there was no such thing as a free favor, not really. Everything came with strings attached. But Emma needed him to get this job. And if wearing a borrowed suit was what it took, he'd swallow his pride and do it. 3 hours later, Marcus sat in the warehouse manager's cramped office, still wearing the navy suit that fit him perfectly, suspiciously perfectly, as if someone had known his exact measurements. The interview had gone well, he thought. But well and good enough were different things, and he'd learned not to count on anything until it was signed and sealed. His phone buzzed as he climbed back into his truck. Another unknown number. Marcus sighed and answered, "Hello?" Victoria's voice came through, and Marcus felt his pulse kick up without permission. How'd the interview go? He should ask how she got his number. He should ask a lot of things. Instead, he found himself answering honestly. Not sure yet. I think okay. A pause, then. Thank you for accepting the suit. Marcus started the engine, needing something to do with his hands. Your assistant was very persuasive. Victoria laughed, a sound that was warmer than Marcus expected. Andrea's good at her job. Another pause, longer this time. Marcus, I need to see you again. The words sent a jolt through him that he immediately tried to ignore. Victoria's voice turned serious. Because I owe you more than a borrowed suit, and I owe you more than words. And because, she hesitated, and then Marcus heard something in that hesitation. Something vulnerable. Because I want to do something that actually matters. And I think you're the person who can help me figure out how. Marcus pulled into his driveway and cut the engine. The eviction notice was in his toolbox. Emma's next month's school supplies were going to cost money he didn't have. Pride was expensive, and he'd already indulged in it enough for one day. What did you have in mind? Victoria's relief was audible. Come to Emma's school tomorrow. Same time you dropped her off today. I'll explain everything then. The line went dead before Marcus could protest. The next morning, Marcus was running late. Emma's science fair volcano had exploded prematurely in the kitchen, covering half the floor with foaming baking soda and vinegar. By the time they'd cleaned up the mess and rebuilt the demonstration, Marcus was wearing his second least stained work shirt, and Emma was vibrating with anxiety about making it to school on time. They rolled into the parking lot at 7:42. Emma was supposed to have her display set up by by 7:30. Marcus helped her carry the volcano model, carefully trying not to trigger another eruption, toward the school entrance. Parents streamed past them, polished and pressed, driving cars that cost more than Marcus made in a year. He tried not to notice, tried not to feel like an imposter in his work boots and flannel. Then he heard it, an engine sound that didn't belong in a suburban elementary school parking lot. Deep, smooth, expensive. Marcus looked up and felt the world tilt slightly. A black sedan slid into the parking lot like a predator entering a clearing. Tinted windows, chrome accents that caught the morning sun. The car stopped in the fire lane, illegal parking that suggested the driver didn't worry about tickets, and the driver's door opened. Victoria Sterling stepped out wearing a white pantsuit that probably cost more than Marcus's truck. Her dark hair was pulled back in a severe style that made her look even more intimidating than she had in his kitchen. Dark sunglasses hid her eyes. She moved with absolute certainty, heels clicking on pavement, heading straight for him like heat-seeking missile. Every parent in the parking lot turned to stare. Conversations stopped. Phones came out. Marcus felt Emma's hand slip into his, her volcano momentarily forgotten. Dad? That's the lady from yesterday. Victoria stopped 3 feet away and removed her sunglasses. Her eyes locked onto his, and Marcus saw something in them he hadn't expected. Nervousness, actual nerves, like she wasn't sure how this would go. Her voice came out steady despite that uncertainty. Mr. Sullivan, we need to talk. Marcus was acutely aware of the audience forming around them, of Emma pressed against his side, of the volcano model getting heavy in his other arm. About what? Victoria pulled a manila envelope from her designer purse. About making things right. Marcus felt his defenses snap into place. If this is about money again, Victoria cut him off with a sharp gesture. It's not. She paused and something flickered across her face. Well, not exactly. She glanced at Emma, seemed to recalibrate. I'm sorry, I'm handling this badly. She turned her attention to Emma, and her expression softened. Hi, you must be Emma. Your dad told me about your science fair. Emma's grip on Marcus's hand tightened, but her voice came out clear and curious. Did you come to see it? Victoria smiled, and it transformed her entire face. Actually, I came to see your dad, but I'd love to see your project too, if that's okay. Emma looked up at Marcus, seeking permission. He nodded, still trying to figure out what game Victoria was playing. Emma's excitement overpowered her wariness. It's a volcano. It shows the chemical reaction between an acid and a base. The baking soda is sodium bicarbonate, which is a base, and the vinegar is acetic acid, and when they mix, they create carbon dioxide gas, which makes the eruption effect. Victoria listened with what appeared to be genuine interest. That sounds amazing. I did a science fair project once a long time ago. Mine was about solar panels. It caught fire during the demonstration. Emma's eyes went wide. Really? Victoria nodded solemnly. Really? So your volcano is already way more successful than mine was. She glanced at Marcus. Why don't you help Emma get set up? I can wait. It was a reasonable suggestion. It was also a trap, leaving Marcus no graceful way to refuse without looking petty in front of his daughter and half the school. Victoria knew it. The slight curve of her lips said she knew it. Marcus forced a smile. Sure, Emma, let's get your volcano inside. The science fair setup took 20 minutes. Marcus helped Emma arrange her display board, position the volcano model, test the eruption mechanism one more time to make sure it worked. Other kids and parents milled around. But Marcus felt acutely aware of Victoria waiting outside, of the spectacle she'd created by showing up here. When Emma was satisfied with her display, she hugged him tight. "Thanks, Dad. You're the best." Marcus kissed the top of her head. "You're going to crush it, kiddo. I'll pick you up at 3." He walked back outside to find Victoria leaning against her sedan, scrolling through her phone. She looked up as he approached, slid the phone into her purse and straightened. "Can we talk? Somewhere private." Marcus glanced around the parking lot. Parents were still watching, some not even pretending to hide their curiosity. "There's a coffee shop 2 blocks away." Victoria shook her head. "Too public. Come with me." She opened the passenger door of her sedan. An invitation, or a command. Marcus couldn't quite tell which. He thought about saying no, about walking away from whatever this was before it got more complicated. But curiosity won out. Or maybe it was something else. The memory of her standing in his kitchen, the vulnerability he'd glimpsed beneath the CEO armor, the quote in the news article about grace and dignity. Marcus got in the car. Victoria slid behind the wheel, started the engine, that same predatory purr, and pulled smoothly out of the parking lot. She didn't speak for several blocks, navigating through morning traffic with practiced ease. Marcus watched the familiar street slide past, wondering where she was taking him. They ended up at a small park overlooking the Willamette River. Victoria parked in a spot that probably wasn't legal and killed the engine. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Finally, Victoria turned to face him. "I'm not good at this." Marcus waited. She took a breath. "Yesterday in your kitchen, I made you an offer, several offers, and you turned them all down. The money, the coffee, everything." Her fingers drummed on the steering wheel, a nervous gesture at odds with her polished exterior. "Do you have any idea how rare that is? People don't say no to me. They take what I offer and ask for more. Or they pretend to refuse out of pride, but eventually cave. You didn't cave." Marcus shrugged. "I don't need charity." Victoria's jaw tightened. It wasn't charity. It was gratitude. Marcus met her eyes. "Gratitude is saying thank you. What you were offering was something else. Payment. Like I saved you because I expected a reward." Victoria was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was softer. "You're right. I'm sorry." She pulled the manila envelope from her purse and set it on the dashboard between them. "But I'm still going to make you an offer, and I need you to actually listen before you refuse." Marcus eyed the envelope warily. "What is it?" Victoria didn't open it yet. Instead, she looked out at the river, her profile sharp against the morning light. "When I was 12, I lived in a foster home. Number 7, if you're counting. I'd been bounced through the system for 4 years by then. This particular home was run by a man named Gerald. Gerald liked his drinks, and he liked his belt, and he didn't like mouthy kids who thought they were better than they were." Her voice stayed flat, factual. "I stole an apple from the kitchen because I was hungry and the school lunch had been hours ago. Gerald caught me, 5 lashes across the back. I still have the scars." Marcus felt something cold settle in his chest. He wanted to say something, but Victoria wasn't done. She continued, still staring at the river. "When I was 14, the girls at my group home locked me in a storage closet for 6 hours. When they finally let me out, they told me I'd never be anything. Never matter. Just another throwaway kid nobody wanted." She paused. "When I was 16, I tried to kill myself in a bathroom at school. A social worker found me before I bled out. Nobody ever asked why I'd done it. They just moved me to a different placement." Marcus's throat felt tight. He didn't know what to say to me, didn't know how to respond to this cascade of trauma delivered in such measured tones. Victoria finally looked at him. "I'm telling you this because I need you to understand something. Everything I have, my company, my money, my reputation, I built it by myself. Nobody helped me. Nobody gave me a chance. I clawed my way up from nothing, and I told myself I'd never be that helpless girl again, that I'd never need anyone." She picked up the envelope. "And then my car hit a tree in the middle of a storm, and a stranger pulled me out of a burning vehicle. A stranger who refused my money, who gave me his bed and his shirt and asked for nothing in return. A stranger who reminded me that character isn't about what you have, but what you do when nobody's watching." Victoria opened the envelope and pulled out papers. I own the building you're renting. As of 3 days ago, I bought it through one of my subsidiary companies. Your rent is paid for the next 12 months. When the year is up, you'll have the option to purchase the property at current market value, minus what you've already paid in rent. Marcus felt his hands curl into fists. I can't accept that. Victoria held up a hand. I'm not finished. I'm also starting a foundation, the Sullivan Foundation for Single Parents. It will provide financial assistance, job training, and childcare support for single parents, specifically single fathers, because nobody talks about them, nobody helps them, and they're falling through every crack in the system. She looked at him directly. I want you to run it. The words hit Marcus like a physical blow. He couldn't process them, couldn't make them make sense. What? Victoria's expression was earnest in a way that seemed to cost her something. You know this community. You know these struggles. You understand what it means to work 3 jobs and still not make rent. You know what it feels like to choose between your kids' lunch money and your own meals. I have the money and the infrastructure, but I don't have your perspective. I don't have your credibility. People like you don't trust people like me, and they shouldn't, but they'll trust you. Marcus shook his head, trying to find solid ground. You don't know me. You met me yesterday. Victoria's lips curved into something that might have been a smile. I've had you investigated. The admission was so casual, so matter-of-fact that it took Marcus a second to register it. When he did, anger flared hot in his chest. You what? Victoria didn't flinch. I had my head of security run a background check. Standard procedure for anyone I'm considering for a significant position. You're clean, no criminal record, excellent work history despite the career setback after your wife died, references from former employers that universally describe you as honest and reliable. Your credit is terrible, but that's because you've been prioritizing Emma's needs over your own, which actually makes you perfect for this role. She paused. I'm sorry if that feels invasive, but I don't make decisions based on feelings. I make them based on information. Marcus stared at her, trying to decide if he was more angry or impressed by the sheer audacity. You had me investigated, and now you want me to work for you, running a foundation you named after me, using my life as some kind of poster campaign for— Victoria cut him off. For showing that men like you matter, that your struggles are valid, that character and dignity exist outside corporate boardrooms and country clubs. Her voice dropped lower. I'm not doing this for PR, Marcus. I'm doing it because last night, for the first time in 20 years, someone saw me as a person instead of a bank account. And it reminded me why I started my company in the first place. Not to get rich, but to help people who were like me. Lost, forgotten, considered disposable. The confession hung between them, raw and real. Marcus looked at her, really looked, and saw past the expensive suit and the polished exterior to something more fragile underneath. A woman who'd built walls so high she'd forgotten what it felt like to be vulnerable. A woman not unlike himself. He took the papers from her hand and scanned them. The property transfer was legitimate, handled through a law firm Marcus recognized from late-night TV commercials. The foundation charter was detailed. Funding structure, mission statement, operational guidelines. His name appeared multiple times. Sullivan Foundation. Technical Director, Marcus Sullivan. Salary, $85,000 annually plus benefits. $85,000, more than twice what the warehouse job would have paid. Enough to keep Emma in her school, in her home, in the life she deserved. Marcus set the papers back in his lap. This is too much. Victoria's voice was quiet but firm. It's exactly enough, and it's not a gift, Marcus. It's a we. You'll work for every penny. I'll make sure of that. She paused. But we do it your way. No press releases unless you approve them. No using Emma for photo ops. No turning your life into a campaign. Just real help for real people. That's the deal. Marcus looked out at the river, at the morning sun reflecting off the water, at the joggers and cyclists passing on the riverside path. Normal people living normal lives, unburdened by the weight of impossible choices. He thought about Emma, about the eviction notice, about the warehouse job he probably hadn't gotten, about the fact that pride was expensive and he'd already spent more than he could afford. He thought about Sarah's last words, whispered in a hospital room that smelled of antiseptic and death. Don't close your heart. Emma deserves to see you happy. Promise me you'll try me. He'd promised, and he'd broken that promise every day for 3 years, burying himself in work and exhaustion because it was easier than feeling. Maybe it was time to try something different. Marcus turned back to Victoria and held out his hand. Okay, we do this my way. No publicity stunts, no flashy announcements, just real help. Victoria's smile was genuine this time, reaching her eyes. Agreed. They shook. Her hand was warm in his, her grip firm and sure. For a moment, neither let go. Then Victoria pulled back and started the engine. I should get you back to your truck, and I have a board meeting in an hour. She pulled out of the parking spot and merged into traffic. Oh, one more thing. Marcus raised an eyebrow. What? Victoria's lips curved into a mischievous smile. I still have your shirt. Despite everything, the confusion, the anger, the overwhelming weight of what he'd just agreed to, Marcus laughed, really laughed, the sound surprising even himself. Keep it. You wear it better anyway. Victoria glanced at him, something warm flickering in her expression. I know I do. They pulled back into the elementary school parking lot. A few parents still lingered, and their heads swiveled as Victoria's sedan came to a smooth stop next to Marcus's battered truck. Phones appeared again. Marcus could already imagine the gossip spinning through the PTA phone tree. He reached for the door handle, then paused. Victoria? She looked at him expectantly. Marcus chose his words carefully. Thank you for the foundation, for believing I'm worth this. He met her eyes. But don't investigate me again without asking. I don't care if it's standard procedure. My life isn't your company, and Emma's privacy isn't negotiable. Victoria's expression sobered. She nodded slowly. You're right, I won't do it again. A pause. I'm not used to people setting boundaries with me. Marcus opened the door. Get used to it. He climbed out of the sedan, and as he walked toward his truck, he heard Victoria's window roll down. Her voice called after him. Marcus? He turned. She was leaning out slightly, sunglasses back in place. I meant what I said in that interview. You have more grace and dignity than anyone I've met in years. Don't let anyone, including me, make you forget that. Before Marcus could respond, she pulled away, the sedan gliding out of the parking lot as smoothly as it had arrived. He stood watching until it disappeared, then climbed into his truck and sat in silence, trying to process everything that had just happened. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Board meeting's over. Here's Andrea's contact info. She'll handle all the administrative setup. First foundation meeting Monday, 9 a.m. Don't be late. V. Marcus stared at the message, then at the papers still sitting on his passenger seat, then at his phone again. His life had just changed course in a fundamental way, and he wasn't entirely sure if that was good or terrifying. Probably both. He started the truck. It took 3 tries, which was better than usual, and headed home. He had 4 days to figure out what the hell he'd gotten himself into. 4 days to prepare for a job he didn't entirely understand, working for a woman who confused and fascinated him in equal measure. 4 days to build a bridge between their worlds. His phone buzzed again. This time it was Emma's school. Mr. Sullivan, Emma's volcano eruption was spectacular. She won first place in her grade. Congratulations. Marcus felt tears prick his eyes unexpectedly. He pulled over because suddenly he couldn't see through the blur. First place. His brilliant, resilient, incredible daughter had won first place. Sarah would have been so proud. He wiped his eyes, took a shaky breath, and texted back his thanks. Then he allowed himself a moment to just sit, to feel the weight of the morning settle over him. A billionaire CEO had upended his life. His daughter had won her science fair. He had a new job that paid enough to give Emma the stability she deserved. Maybe that promise he'd made to Sarah about not closing his heart, about trying to be happy, maybe he could actually keep it. Maybe grace and dignity were worth more than he'd realized. Marcus put the truck in gear and drove home, where a borrowed suit waited to be returned and a new chapter waited to be written. 1 month slid by in a blur of paperwork and learning curves. Marcus found himself sitting in an office that felt like borrowed skin, 7th floor of Sterling Dynamics headquarters, corner view overlooking downtown Portland, furniture that cost more than his truck. The desk alone probably ran 5 figures. He'd kept his coffee mug from home, the chipped ceramic thing with a faded Seahawks logo, as a small act of defiance against all this corporate polish. The foundation work was harder than he'd anticipated. Not the concept, helping single parents navigate the system, connecting them with resources, providing emergency funds when the electricity bill came due and the bank account read zero. That part made sense. That part felt like purpose. But the administrative sphere, grant applications, budget spreadsheets, compliance paperwork, donor cultivation strategies, felt like learning a foreign language without a dictionary. Andrea Chen, Victoria's assistant, had become his unofficial translator. She'd appear at his office door 3 times a day with color-coded folders and patient explanations delivered in her precise, unflappable manner. Today she stood in his doorway holding a tablet, her expression suggesting something had gone wrong. Marcus looked up from the application he'd been reviewing. "What's the damage?" Andrea turned the tablet to face him. On screen was the Sterling Dynamics headquarters lobby, specifically the massive HVAC control panel that Marcus had noticed during his first week. Red warning lights blinked across the display. The main system crashed 20 minutes ago. Outside temperature is 94 degrees. The building has approximately 3,000 employees. Facilities management called in 3 contractors. All 3 said the entire system needs replacement. $200,000 minimum. Marcus stood, already moving toward the door. "Show me." The mechanical room was in the basement, accessed through a service corridor that smelled of cleaning chemicals and recycled air. The head of facilities, a tired-looking man named Roy with 30 years of building management etched into the lines around his eyes, was shouting into his phone when Marcus and Andrea arrived. He looked up, frustration evident. "You're the foundation guy, right? Unless you've got a magic wand, I don't think—" Marcus walked past him to the main control unit. The system was old, probably original to the building's construction in the 80s. Whoever had maintained it over the years had done decent work, but age caught up with everything eventually. He opened the panel, examined the pressure gauges, traced the refrigerant lines with his eyes. The compressor was shot. That much was obvious from the grinding sound still echoing from the unit. But the contractor's assessment was wrong. You didn't need to replace everything just because one component failed. That was the difference between someone who sold services and someone who actually understood the mechanics. Marcus pulled out his phone, opened the Notes app, started documenting. "Your compressor's seized. Bearing failure, probably from the heat stress. But the real problem is your control board. See this?" He pointed to a circuit board covered in a fine layer of dust. "It's cycling too fast, doesn't give the system time to equalize pressure between starts. That's what killed your compressor. You keep putting in new parts without fixing this, you'll be replacing compressors every 18 months. Roy stepped closer, interest overriding skepticism. "The contractors said—" Marcus cut him off, keeping his focus on the machinery. "The contractors want to sell you a full replacement because that's where their profit margin lives. But you don't need it. You need a variable speed control board, runs about $2,000, and a new compressor with better bearings. Call it $8,000 total, including labor. 2 days of work, and your system runs cleaner than it has in a decade." Roy's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. "You're sure?" Marcus finally looked at him. "I spent 10 years maintaining industrial systems for Boeing. This is basic compared to what I handled there. I can write up specs if you want a second opinion. But I'm telling you, anyone who says you need full replacement is either incompetent or dishonest." Andrea had been silent throughout the exchange, but now she spoke quietly. "I'll inform Miss Sterling of your assessment." Marcus straightened, wiped his hands on his jeans. He'd touched the machinery without thinking, left streaks of grease on the denim. It's just machinery, pretty simple once you understand how pressure and heat interact. Andrea's lips curved slightly. "Most people in this building wouldn't know a compressor from a coffee maker. Miss Sterling was right about you." The comment landed strange. Marcus wasn't sure if it was compliment or confirmation of some assessment he hadn't consented to. Before he could respond, his phone buzzed. Text from Victoria. Heard you saved the building from becoming a sauna. Dinner tonight to discuss. I'll cook. Marcus stared at the message. Victoria Sterling, billionaire CEO, offering to cook dinner. The dissonance was strong enough to give him whiplash. He texted back, Emma has soccer practice until 7. Victoria's response came immediately. Perfect. 7:30 at my place. I'll send the address. Bring Emma. I have a pool if she wants to swim after. Marcus pocketed his phone, already feeling the familiar tension of boundaries being tested. Dinner at Victoria's place. With Emma. This was moving from professional towards something else. Something undefined and potentially dangerous. But Emma had been asking about Miss Victoria every day since the science fair. And Victoria had been good to them. The foundation work was real. The help tangible. Maybe dinner was just dinner. He headed back upstairs to finish reviewing applications, trying not to think too hard about what 7:30 would bring. Victoria's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of a building overlooking the Willamette River. Marcus stood in the lobby, Emma beside him clutching her swimsuit in a plastic bag, and tried not to feel completely out of his depth. The doorman had greeted them by name. Victoria had clearly called ahead and directed them to a private elevator that required a keycard to operate. The elevator opened directly into Victoria's living space. Floor-to-ceiling windows wrapped around 3 sides, offering a panoramic view of the city as the sun began its descent toward the western hills. The furniture was modern and minimal, all clean lines and neutral colors, but somehow the space didn't feel cold. Books lined one wall, actual paper book with worn spines suggesting they'd been read multiple times. A blanket was draped over the back of the couch, soft and rumpled. Fresh flowers sat on the kitchen island. Victoria appeared from what Marcus assumed was the kitchen, wearing jeans and a simple black t-shirt. No suit, no armor, just a woman in casual clothes, hair loose around her shoulders, barefoot on the hardwood floors. Emma's shyness evaporated. Miss Victoria, you have a pool. Victoria smiled. On the terrace. It's heated if you want to swim later. But first, she gestured toward the kitchen island where ingredients were laid out. I need help making dinner. Do you know how to mix a salad? Emma nodded enthusiastically, dropping her bag and running toward the kitchen. Marcus followed more slowly, taking in details. The kitchen was enormous, restaurant-quality appliances, but the counter showed signs of actual use. A well-worn cutting board, a knife block with handles that didn't match, a container of utensils that looked collected rather than purchased as a set. Victoria caught him looking. I like to cook. It's meditative. She handed Emma a bowl and began showing her how to tear lettuce, her movements practiced and efficient. Marcus leaned against the counter, feeling simultaneously comfortable and off balance. This isn't what I expected. Victoria glanced at him, one eyebrow raised. What did you expect? He gestured vaguely at the space. I don't know. More corporate, like your office, but with a bed? Victoria laughed, the sound genuine and warm. I spend enough time being the CEO. Home is different. So she handed Emma a tomato and a kid-safe knife. Can you cut this into pieces? Good. Just like that. They fell into an easy rhythm. Victoria made pasta from scratch. Actual pasta, rolling out dough on a marble counter while Emma watched with fascination. Marcus found himself assigned to sauce duty, following Victoria's precise instructions about garlic and olive oil and fresh basil. The conversation flowed around the cooking, comfortable and natural. Emma asked questions about everything, the building, the view, whether Victoria had always lived in a place this big. Victoria answered honestly, not talking down, treating Emma like a person whose opinions mattered. Dinner was simple and perfect. They ate at the kitchen island rather than the formal dining table, Emma between them, chattering about school and soccer and her next science project. Victoria engaged completely, asking follow-up questions, genuinely interested. Marcus watched the interaction and felt something in his chest loosen slightly. After dinner, Emma did swim, 20 minutes in the heated pool on the terrace while Marcus and Victoria sat in deck chairs, watching the city lights flicker on as darkness fell. The temperature had dropped to something comfortable, the earlier heat bleeding away. Victoria's voice came quietly. She's remarkable. You're doing an incredible job with her. Marcus felt the familiar swell of pride mixed with inadequacy. I'm trying. Some days are better than others. Victoria was silent for a moment then. My mother left when I was 4. My father when I was 6. Different reasons, same result. I ended up in the system. Bounced around until I aged out at 18. She paused. I tell you this because Emma will never have that uncertainty. She knows she's loved. She knows she matters. That's everything. Marcus looked at her profile, the elegant lines of her face softened by the low light. You turned out pretty well despite it. Victoria's laugh was hollow. I turned out rich. That's not the same as well. She met his eyes. I have everything money can buy and nothing it can't. Most days I'm fine with that equation. But sometimes she stopped, seeming to reconsider. Sometimes I wonder what it would have been like to have what Emma has. Someone who'd do anything for her. Someone who sees her as the whole world. The vulnerability in her voice hit Marcus unexpectedly. He wanted to reach out, to offer comfort, but Emma's splash broke the moment. The rest of the evening passed easily. When it was time to leave, Victoria handed Marcus a container with leftover pasta. For lunch tomorrow. Emma hugged Victoria spontaneously, fierce and quick. Can we come back? Victoria's expression softened completely. Anytime. In the elevator down, Emma leaned against Marcus's side. I like her. She's lonely, though. Marcus looked down at his daughter, once again struck by her perceptiveness. What makes you think that? Emma shrugged. Her house is pretty, but it feels empty, like nobody lives there except her. She looked up at him with those blue eyes that saw too much. We should visit more, so she's not so lonely. Marcus kissed the top of her head, throat tight. Yeah, kiddo, we should. The working dinners became a pattern. Twice a week, Marcus and Emma would show up at Victoria's penthouse, and they'd cook together, eat together, talk about everything and nothing. Victoria taught Emma about business and investments. Emma taught Victoria about soccer and science projects. Marcus found himself relaxing into the routine, the boundaries between professional and personal blurring in ways that should have concerned him more than they did. The problem started small. Marcus picked Emma up from school one Friday to find her wearing clothes he'd never seen before. A designer dress in soft blue probably cost more than his monthly grocery budget. Patent leather shoes that weren't the worn sneakers she'd left the house in that morning. A hair clip that sparkled with what might have been actual crystals. Emma saw his expression. Miss Victoria sent them. They were delivered to school at lunch. The principal said it was okay. She spun around, making the dress flare. Do you like it? Marcus forced a smile, not wanting to dim her excitement. You look beautiful, sweetheart. Go wait in the truck. I need to make a quick call. Once Emma was out of earshot, Marcus pulled out his phone and called Victoria. She answered on the second ring, her voice professional, probably in a meeting. Marcus, is everything okay? His jaw was tight enough to ache. We need to talk, in person, tonight. A pause, then, I have a late call with Tokyo. Can it wait until... Marcus cut her off. No, it can't. Tonight, after Emma's asleep, I'll come to you. Victoria's voice shifted, became more careful. Okay, 9 o'clock. Marcus arrived at 9:15, having taken extra time to get Emma settled and to make sure his anger had cooled from boiling to merely simmering. Victoria met him at the elevator, barefoot again, concern evident. What happened? Marcus pulled the shopping bag from behind his back. He'd made Emma change back into her regular clothes before leaving school. He set it on the counter with more force than necessary. This is what happened. Victoria looked at the bag, then at him, genuine confusion on her face. The clothes, I saw them at Nordstrom. They were perfect for Emma's coloring, and I thought, Marcus's control slipped. You thought what? That my daughter needs you to dress her? That the clothes I provide aren't good enough? Victoria's eyes widened. No, that's not. I was just trying to do something nice. Marcus felt something crack in his chest, all the pressure of the past month finding release. You don't get to make those decisions. She's my daughter. Mine, not yours. You want to help? Ask. You want to buy her something? Check with me first. You don't get to swoop in and he stopped, trying to find the right words. You don't get to try to fix us like we're broken. Victoria's face had gone pale. I didn't mean it like that. Marcus pressed on, the words needing to come out. This is what people like you do. You see something you think needs improving, and you throw money at it. New clothes, better schools, nicer things. But Emma doesn't need nicer things. She needs stability. She needs to know that who she is right now, in her thrift store jeans and her hand-me-down shoes, is enough. The silence that followed felt heavy enough to collapse the floor. Victoria's hands trembled slightly before she crossed her arms, a defensive gesture. I'm sorry, you're right. I overstepped. Her voice was quiet, strained. She's such a great kid, and I wanted to. She stopped, swallowed hard. I don't know how to do this, any of this, being part of someone's life. I don't have a blueprint. The admission took some of the heat out of Marcus's anger. He exhaled slowly. Then ask for one. Talk to me. Don't just decide things that affect my kid. Victoria nodded, still not meeting his eyes. I won't do it again. I promise. She looked up finally. Can I still see her? I know I messed up, but Marcus felt his anger drain away completely, replaced by something more complicated. Of course, but Victoria, Emma's not a project. She's not something you fix or improve. She's just a kid who needs consistency and boundaries. You want to be part of her life? Actually be part of it. Not as a benefactor, as a person. Victoria's eyes were bright, moisture gathering at the corners. I'm not used to people setting limits with me. Marcus moved closer, his voice gentler now. Get used to it, because if this, he gestured between them, whatever this is going to work. You need to understand that Emma comes first, always, no exceptions, and decisions about her go through me. Victoria wiped her eyes quickly, nodded again. Understood. A pause, then. For what it's worth, I really was just trying to do something nice. I saw the dress and thought of her. I didn't think about how it might feel from your side. Marcus believed her. That was somehow worse. Knowing her intentions were good made it harder to stay angry. I know, but good intentions don't erase impact. He softened further. Emma loved the dress, by the way. Made her day. But next time, give it to me to give to her. Let me be the one who provides. Victoria's lips curved slightly. Your pride is showing. Marcus didn't apologize. Yeah, it is. That's non-negotiable too. They stood looking at each other for a long moment. The tension had shifted, become something different. Not anger anymore. Something else. Something neither seemed ready to name. Victoria broke eye contact first. I should let you get home. I know it's late. But she didn't move toward the elevator. Marcus didn't move either. Yeah, I should go. Still standing there, Victoria's voice dropped lower. I really am sorry about overstepping. Marcus nodded. I know. The elevator dinged. Marcus stepped in, turned to face her. Victoria remained in the doorway, backlit by her expensive lights, looking smaller somehow than her reputation suggested. The doors started to close. Marcus caught them, held them open. Victoria? She looked up. Yeah. Marcus chose his words carefully. Thank you for caring about her. Just let me parent her. Okay. Victoria's smile was genuine despite the tears still threatening. Okay. The doors closed. Marcus rode down alone, his emotions tangled and complicated. Part of him felt good about setting boundaries. Part of him felt guilty for snapping at someone who'd only tried to be generous. Part of him was starting to realize that his feelings for Victoria were becoming something more than professional respect. That last part scared him most of all. At home, Marcus lay awake long after Emma had fallen asleep. The house was quiet except for the occasional creak of old wood settling. He stared at the ceiling, his mind refusing to stop churning. Sarah's face appeared in his memory, vivid and painful. Not the gaunt, hollow-eyed version from her final weeks, but Sarah from before. Vibrant and laughing, dancing in the kitchen while dinner burned, stealing kisses when Emma wasn't looking. Sarah who'd made their tiny apartment feel like a palace through sheer force of personality. Sarah who'd died whispering, Don't close your heart. Emma deserves to see you happy. Promise me you'll try. He'd promised, and then spent 3 years doing exactly the opposite, burying himself in work and exhaustion because grief was easier than healing, because staying faithful to a ghost felt safer than risking his heart on something new. But Victoria wasn't asking for his heart, was she? They were colleagues, friends maybe, nothing more. Except he thought about her constantly. The way she listened when Emma talked, the way she moved in her kitchen, confident and graceful, the vulnerability that leaked through her CEO armor when she thought no one was watching, the loneliness Emma had spotted immediately, a loneliness that mirrored his own. Marcus rolled onto his side, staring at the empty space where Sarah used to sleep. Guilt crashed over him in waves. How could he be thinking about another woman when Sarah had been everything? When he'd promised her forever? When Emma's mother had been gone barely 3 years? But Sarah's last words echoed, "Don't close your heart." Maybe that was the point. Maybe Sarah had known that living in the past would poison whatever future he and Emma could build. Maybe permission had been her final gift. Marcus closed his eyes, exhaustion finally winning over insomnia. Tomorrow the foundation had its public launch event. Tomorrow he'd have to stand in front of cameras and donors and speak about things that mattered. Tomorrow he'd see Victoria again and they'd navigate whatever this complicated thing between them was becoming. Tonight, he just needed sleep. Across the city, Victoria sat in her darkened living room, knees pulled to her chest, staring out at Portland's lights. The penthouse felt cavernous and cold despite the expensive heating system. She'd turned off all the lights, preferring darkness to the harsh reminder of how empty this space was. Marcus's words circled in her head. Emma's not a project. He was right. She knew he was right. But knowing and understanding were different things. Victoria had spent her entire adult life solving problems with money and strategy. See a need, fill it. Find a gap, close it. Efficiency and results, measurable outcomes, clear objectives. Except people weren't projects. Relationships weren't contracts. And somewhere along the path from foster kid to billionaire, she'd forgotten how to connect without calculating the ROI. Emma's spontaneous hug from earlier that week replayed in her mind. The way the kid had just thrown her arms around Victoria's waist, pure and uncomplicated. No agenda, no expectation, just affection freely given. Victoria couldn't remember the last time someone had touched her without wanting something in return. Her phone sat dark on the coffee table. She could call her therapist. Dr. Chen kept unusual hours and wouldn't mind a late session. But Victoria didn't want to analyze this feeling, didn't want to dissect it into component parts and assign therapeutic interventions. She just wanted to sit with it, this strange combination of shame and longing, and something that might have been hope. The truth was simple and terrifying. She was falling for Marcus Sullivan, for his stubborn pride and his fierce love for his daughter and the way he refused to be impressed by her money or her power, for the fact that he saw her, really saw her, and still chose to keep showing up. But Marcus was complicated, grieving, devoted to Emma in a way that left little room for anyone else. And Victoria had already proven tonight that she didn't know how to be what they needed. She was too much and not enough simultaneously, too controlling, too used to getting her way, too damaged by a childhood that had taught her self-sufficiency was the only reliable strategy. Victoria's reflection stared back at her from the darkened window. 34 years old, 800 million in net worth. Zero idea how to be someone's person without destroying it through sheer force of will. She thought about that night in Marcus's kitchen, wearing his shirt, drinking his cheap coffee. She'd felt more at home there in 20 minutes than she did here after 3 years of ownership. Maybe that was the problem. You could own everything and belong nowhere. The city lights blurred. Victoria blinked hard, refusing the tears. She'd cried enough for one lifetime. Crying didn't solve problems. Action did. Strategy did. Control did. Except maybe control was the problem. Victoria pulled her phone out, opened the Notes app, started typing. Things I need to learn. How to ask permission. How to respect boundaries. How to be part of something without trying to run it. The list felt pathetic and necessary in equal measure. But it was a start. And if building a relationship required the same dedication she'd applied to building her company, then maybe she could figure it out. Her phone buzzed. Text from Marcus. Sorry for snapping earlier. You're good to Emma. I appreciate that. See you at the launch tomorrow. Victoria stared at the message, an apology he didn't need to make. Grace extended despite her mistake. This man, this stubborn, prideful, beautiful man, was teaching her things money couldn't buy. She typed back, see you tomorrow. And Marcus, thank you for the lesson. I needed it. His response came quickly. We're figuring this out together. That's what matters. Victoria read the message 3 times, then set the phone down and allowed herself a small smile. Together, the word felt foreign and wonderful. Maybe she wasn't as alone as she'd thought. The Portland Convention Center buzzed with controlled chaos. Marcus stood backstage, tugging at the collar of his dress shirt, borrowed again from Victoria's seemingly endless supply of appropriate clothing, and tried to remember why he'd agreed to speak publicly. Andrea appeared at his elbow with a water bottle and a schedule. You're on in 10 minutes. Victoria will introduce you. Your speech is loaded on the teleprompter, but she said you'd probably ignore it and speak from the heart anyway. Marcus accepted the water, throat suddenly dry. I'm not a public speaker. Andrea's expression softened slightly. You're a father who understands struggle. That's all you need to be. She checked her tablet. 300 people in the audience. Local press, major donors. This is important, Marcus. The foundation's credibility depends on tonight. No pressure then. Marcus's stomach churned. He could fix machinery. He could solve problems. But standing in front of 300 people and making them care about single fathers who were barely surviving? That felt impossible. Emma appeared from somewhere dressed in the blue designer outfit Victoria had originally sent. Marcus had relented, deciding the launch event was an appropriate venue. Emma grabbed his hand. Dad, you're going to be great. Just talk like you talk to me. Marcus looked down at his daughter, this 7-year-old with more wisdom than he'd possessed at 30. When did you get so smart? Emma grinned. I learned from the best. The lights in the auditorium dimmed. Victoria's voice came through the speakers, confident and clear. Marcus couldn't hear the words from backstage, but he heard the audience response. Applause, murmurs of approval. Then Andrea was pushing him toward the stage entrance, and there was no more time to panic. He walked out into blinding lights. The audience was a dark mass beyond the stage glow. Victoria stood at the podium, elegant in a navy suit, her eyes finding his immediately. She smiled, and something in Marcus's chest unclenched slightly. Victoria's voice carried across the hall. Marcus Sullivan embodies everything this foundation represents. Dignity, perseverance, the quiet strength of those who keep going when the world says stop. She gestured toward him. Please welcome our technical director. The applause was thunderous. Marcus walked to the podium, accepted the microphone Victoria handed him, felt her hand squeeze his briefly before she stepped aside. He looked out at the faces starting to resolve from the darkness. Reporters in the front rows, donors in expensive suits, foundation staff scattered throughout. Emma sat in the front, giving him 2 thumbs up. That was what mattered, not these strangers, his daughter. Marcus cleared his throat. I'm not good at speeches. His voice echoed through the hall, amplified and strange. I'm not a businessman. I'm not a motivational speaker. I'm just a dad who's been there. The honest admission seemed to shift something in the room. People leaned forward slightly. Marcus continued, finding his rhythm. 3 months ago, I had $247 in my bank account and an eviction notice in my toolbox. I was working 3 jobs and still couldn't make rent. I was exhausted every day and scared every night. Scared my daughter would end up in the system because I couldn't provide. Scared I wasn't enough. The words came easier now. Being a single father means you don't get to be weak. You're mom and dad both. You're the provider and the nurturer. You're the one who fixes broken things and the one who wipes away tears. And society doesn't really see you. They see single mothers, rightfully so. They're incredible. But single fathers, we're invisible. Or worse, we're suspects. Why do you have full custody? What did you do wrong? Murmurs of recognition rippled through the audience. Marcus pressed on. The Sullivan Foundation exists because somebody saw me. Not as a charity case, not as a statistic, as a person with value beyond my bank balance, as someone whose struggles mattered. He looked directly at Victoria, and that changes everything. When someone believes you're worth investing in, you start believing it too. The teleprompter scrolled with prepared remarks. Marcus ignored it completely. This foundation won't solve poverty. It won't fix the system, but it will see people. It will provide real help to real families. And sometimes that's enough to keep someone from giving up. His voice grew stronger. So if you're a single parent out there struggling to make it work, feeling invisible, you're not. You matter. Your kids are lucky to have you. And now you have support, real support. Because dignity isn't about what you have. It's about refusing to quit, even when quitting makes sense. Marcus set the microphone down. The silence lasted 3 heartbeats. Then the audience rose as one, applause crashing like waves. Marcus stood frozen, overwhelmed by the response. Emma was crying in the front row. Happy tears, the kind that came from pride. Victoria's expression held something Marcus couldn't quite read but felt down to his bones. He'd done it, somehow. Backstage, Victoria found him immediately. That was perfect. Marcus's hands were still shaking from adrenaline. I went completely off script. Victoria's smile was radiant. I know. It was better than anything I could have written. She hesitated, then pulled him into a brief hug. Professional. Collegial. Over in seconds, but Marcus felt the contact everywhere. Emma crashed into both of them, still crying. You were amazing. Marcus scooped her up, holding tight. Thanks, kiddo. The rest of the evening blurred. Handshakes with donors, photos with press, conversations with foundation staff. Marcus moved through it mechanically, his mind still processing what had just happened. He'd spoken publicly about his struggles. He'd made himself vulnerable in front of hundreds of people. And somehow it had mattered. Near midnight, after Emma had fallen asleep in a quiet room Andrea had arranged, Marcus found Victoria on the convention center's balcony, overlooking the city. She stood alone, the cool night air moving her hair. Marcus joined her at the railing. Successful event. Victoria didn't look at him. Because of you, your speech was... She stopped, searching for words. It was everything I hoped this foundation could be. Honest, real, human. They stood in comfortable silence, shoulders nearly touching. The city sprawled below them, lights and lives and stories unfolding in the darkness. Victoria's voice came quietly. I meant what I said in my introduction, about you embodying dignity. She turned to face him. You remind me that character exists outside boardrooms and bank accounts. Marcus met her eyes. You remind me that success doesn't have to mean losing yourself. The words hung between them, weighted with implication. Victoria's hand rested on the railing, inches from his. Marcus could close that distance easily. One small movement, and they'd be touching. Crossing a line they'd carefully avoided since that first morning in his kitchen. Marcus pulled back slightly. I should check on Emma. Disappointment flickered across Victoria's face, quickly masked. Of course, dear. He turned to go, made it 3 steps, then stopped. Victoria? She looked at him, hope and caution warring in her expression. Yeah. Marcus chose honesty over safety. This thing between us, I don't know what it is, but I want to figure it out. When I'm ready, when Emma's ready. Victoria's smile was small but genuine. I can wait. I'm good at waiting. Marcus nodded, then left her standing under the stars, 2 people orbiting each other without collision, building something neither quite understood, but both desperately wanted. 2 weeks after the launch, an unmarked manila envelope arrived at Marcus's office. No return address, no postage, hand-delivered, based on the pristine condition. Andrea wasn't at her desk to intercept it, which was unusual. Marcus almost tossed it aside, assuming it was more paperwork requiring his signature, but something about the weight made him pause. Inside were photographs, 8 by 10 glossies, professional quality. Marcus staring at them, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. The first photo showed him leaving his house, taken from across the street with a telephoto lens. Date stamp, 6 weeks ago, before Victoria had walked back into his life. The second showed him at Emma's school, the angle suggesting surveillance from a parked vehicle. The third captured him at the grocery store, counting change at the register. Marcus's hands began to shake as he flipped through the stack. Someone had been watching him, documenting his movements, cataloging his life like a suspect under investigation. Beneath the photos was a printed report, 30 pages bound with a black clip. The header read, "Background Investigation. Subject, Marcus James Sullivan." Below that, a company name, Wallace & Associates, Private Investigations. And below that, in smaller text, client, Sterling Dynamics, ATN, Victoria Sterling, CEO. The blood drained from Marcus's face. He scanned the report with growing horror. Every detail of his life laid bare in clinical language. Employment history going back 15 years. Credit reports showing every late payment, every maxed out card, the exact amount of debt he'd accumulated during Sarah's illness. Medical records, Sarah's illness, the hospital stays, the astronomical bills, Emma's school records, his military service from a decade ago, even his grocery shopping habits, quantified and analyzed. Margin notes in handwriting, Marcus recognized as Victoria's. Verify sole custody, no legal issues, and financial stress, significant but managed responsibly, and check for criminal record. Negative, it expected. Marcus felt violated in a way that went beyond words. This wasn't just an invasion of privacy. This was Victoria reducing him to data points, to risk assessments, to variables in whatever equation she'd been calculating. Every vulnerable moment of the past 3 years, the bankruptcy filing he'd narrowly avoided, the nights he'd donated plasma for grocery money, the credit card he'd used for Emma's birthday present, knowing he couldn't pay it back. All of it documented and evaluated like he was a business proposition rather than a person. The office walls seemed to close in. Marcus grabbed his keys and phone, left the report on his desk, and drove directly to Sterling Dynamics headquarters. The receptionist tried to stop him. Ms. Sterling was in a board meeting, but Marcus walked past her toward the executive elevator, using the access card Victoria had given him for foundation business. The boardroom was on the top floor, glass walls revealing 12 people seated around a massive table. Victoria stood at the head, mid-presentation, financial projections displayed on the screen behind her. She looked powerful and composed, every inch the CEO who'd built an empire from nothing. Marcus opened the door without knocking. 12 heads swiveled toward him. Victoria's eyes widened in surprise that quickly shifted to concern. Her voice remained professional despite the interruption. "Marcus, I'm in the middle of..." He threw the report on the table, pages scattering. "What the hell is this?" Victoria's face went pale. She glanced at the report, then at the board members watching with undisguised curiosity. "Everyone, please excuse us. We'll resume in 30 minutes. An older man in an expensive suit, the board chairman based on his seat position, frowned. "Victoria, we have a schedule." Victoria's tone left no room for argument. 30 minutes. The board filed out slowly, several members casting speculative glances at Marcus as they passed. When the last person exited, Victoria closed the door and faced him, her composure cracking slightly. "Where did you get that?" Marcus's laugh was bitter. "Anonymous delivery, but it has your notes in the margins, so I'm guessing you know exactly where it came from." He advanced a step. "You investigated me, had me followed, documented every failure, every struggle, every private moment, like I was a security risk." Victoria held up both hands, placating. "Marcus, I can explain." His voice rose despite his efforts to control it. "Explain what? That you trusted a private investigator more than your own judgment? That the man who pulled you from a burning car needed a background check before you'd, what, decide I was worth your time?" Victoria flinched at the accusation. "It wasn't like that. It's standard procedure for anyone in a significant position with the foundation." "I had to be sure," Marcus cut her off, fury overriding reason. "Sure of what? That I wasn't a con artist? That I wasn't using you?" He gestured at the scattered pages. "I gave your money back, Victoria. I've never asked you for anything except respect." Victoria's voice trembled slightly, the CEO mask slipping. "You don't understand. I've been burned before. People lie. They get close for the wrong reasons. I had to know." Marcus stepped closer, keeping his voice low and hard. You had to know what? Whether I was real? Whether my struggles were legitimate enough to deserve your charity? The words tasted like poison. You made me feel like a suspect instead of... He stopped, choking on the admission. Victoria's eyes were bright with unshed tears. Instead of what? Marcus forced the words out through gritted teeth. Instead of someone you were falling in love with. The confession hung between them, raw and painful. Victoria's breath caught audibly. For a moment, neither moved. Then Victoria stepped forward, reaching for him. Marcus, please. I'm so sorry. It was a mistake. I was scared. He pulled back from her touch like it burned. Scared of what? Of trusting someone? Of being vulnerable? He shook his head, bitter laughter escaping. You talk about dignity and character, but the first thing you did was investigate whether I was worthy of your attention. Do you have any idea how that feels? Victoria's tears spilled over. I know it was wrong, but in my world, trust is... Marcus interrupted, his voice dropping to something more dangerous than anger. I'm not from your world, and maybe that's the problem. Maybe you'll never be able to see me as anything other than a charity case who needs vetting before he's allowed close to the billionaire. Victoria's face crumpled. That's not fair. Marcus grabbed his keys. Fair? You want to talk about fair? He gestured at the report. You put my daughter's medical records in there. Emma's private information. Her therapy sessions after Sarah died, the nightmares she had for a year. All of it documented and analyzed like... His voice broke. Like we were data points in your risk assessment. The mention of Emma seemed to hit Victoria harder than anything else. Her hand went to her mouth, horror dawning. I never meant... Marcus headed for the door. That's the problem. You didn't think about how it would feel from my side. You just did what made sense to you. He paused at the threshold, not turning back. I need space, time to figure out if this is something I can forgive. Victoria's voice came out small and broken. Marcus, please don't go. We can fix this. He looked back at her, this powerful woman reduced to tears, this CEO who could buy anything except the ability to unsee the hurt she'd caused. Some things can't be fixed with money or strategy. Sometimes you just have to live with the consequences of your choices. Marcus left her standing in the boardroom, alone with 12 empty chairs and the scattered pages of a report that had cost her more than she'd realized. The drive home passed in a blur. Marcus's phone buzzed repeatedly, Victoria calling, then texting, then calling again. He ignored it all, focusing on the road, on breathing, on not thinking about the betrayal still churning in his gut. Emma was at a friend's house for a play date, wouldn't be home until dinner. Marcus was grateful for the solitude. He couldn't face his daughter yet, couldn't pretend everything was fine when his world had just shifted on its axis. He made it inside before the anger transformed into something worse. Leaning against the closed door, Marcus felt the full weight of what had just happened. Victoria had investigated him, had violated his privacy, Emma's privacy, in the name of due diligence, had treated their connection like a business transaction requiring verification before proceeding. The rational part of his brain understood. She was wealthy, visible, vulnerable to people with ulterior motives. Background checks probably were standard for anyone in her inner circle. But rational understanding didn't erase the emotional impact. The shame of having his financial struggles quantified, the violation of having his grief documented, the humiliation of being evaluated like a prospective employee rather than a person she cared about. Marcus's phone buzzed again. This time it was a news alert, the kind that usually announced traffic jams or weather warnings. He almost dismissed it, but the headline caught his eye. Sterling CEO's secret romance, billionaire dating man she rescued. His stomach dropped. He clicked the article, dread mounting with every word. The story had everything. Photos of Victoria's car outside his house, timestamps showing she'd visited regularly over the past 6 weeks, photos of them at Emma's school, at the foundation launch, leaving restaurants together, quotes from anonymous sources close to the situation, speculating about their relationship. A particularly vicious line near the end. Critics wonder if Sullivan exploited Sterling's gratitude over the rescue, positioning himself for financial gain through both the foundation role and personal relationship. Marcus read it twice, then checked social media. The story was everywhere. Hashtags already trending. Comments ranged from supportive to viciously cruel. Most questioned his motives. Several called him a gold digger. One particularly nasty thread analyzed his net worth versus Victoria's, concluding he was obviously using her for money. His phone rang. Unknown number. Marcus answered without thinking. Hello? A woman's voice, professional and clipped. Mr. Sullivan, this is Jennifer Park from the Oregonian. I'm doing a follow-up piece on your relationship with Victoria Sterling. Would you be willing to comment on allegations that you've financially benefited from? Marcus ended the call, hands shaking. Another call came immediately, then another. Then, his phone became a weapon, each ring an accusation. He silenced it, tossed it on the couch, and sank into a chair. This was it. The moment he'd feared since accepting Victoria's help. The world reducing their connection to a transaction, painting him as an opportunist who'd manipulated a vulnerable woman. Never mind the truth. Never mind that he'd refused her money repeatedly. Never mind that every feeling he had for her was real and terrifying and completely separate from her bank account. The world saw what it wanted to see. A struggling, single father who'd hit the lottery by rescuing a billionaire. Emma came home at 6, her friend's mother dropping her off with a concerned look Marcus pretended not to notice. Emma bounded inside, chattering about her afternoon, then stopped when she saw his face. Her voice went small. Dad? What's wrong? Marcus forced a smile that felt like glass. Nothing, sweetheart. Just a long day. The lie tasted bitter, but Emma was 7. She didn't need to carry this weight, except Emma wasn't buying it. She climbed onto the couch beside him, her expression unnaturally serious. Is it about Miss Victoria? Marcus's careful composure cracked slightly. Why would you think that? Emma pulled out her iPad, a gift from Victoria that Marcus had initially refused before relenting, and showed him her screen. She'd been looking at kid-friendly news sites for a school project, and there, amid stories about science fairs and soccer championships, was a sanitized version of the story tearing through adult media. Local CEO and her hero, a modern fairy tale. Marcus felt sick. Even the children's news sites were covering this, which meant Emma's classmates would see it, which meant questions, speculation, the kind of social nightmare that followed kids for years. Emma's voice trembled. Are people saying bad things about you? Marcus pulled her close, heartbreaking. Some people are confused about why Miss Victoria and I are friends. They don't understand. Emma burrowed into his side. But you saved her, and then you became friends. That's good, right? The simplicity of her understanding made Marcus want to weep. It's good, baby. But sometimes adults make things complicated. They sat like that for a long time, Marcus holding his daughter while his phone continued its silent assault of calls and messages he wouldn't answer. Eventually, Emma dozed off, exhausted by the day's excitement. Marcus carried her to bed, tucked her in, kissed her forehead. She stirred slightly, murmured, "Love you, Dad." Marcus's throat closed. "Love you too, kiddo. So much." Back in the living room, Marcus finally checked his phone. 43 missed calls, 67 texts, most from numbers he didn't recognize, journalists, he assumed. Several from Victoria, each more desperate than the last. "Marcus, please call me. We need to talk about the article." "I'm handling this. My PR team is drafting a statement. Please don't shut me out. I know you're angry, but we can get through this." "I love you. I should have said it before. I'm sorry I didn't." That last message hit like a punch to the sternum. "I love you." 3 words he'd been avoiding thinking about, let alone saying. 3 words that changed everything and complicated everything and made this disaster so much worse. Because he loved her too. Somewhere between arguing in her penthouse and cooking dinner together and watching her teach Emma about compound interest, he'd fallen for Victoria Sterling. Fallen despite his better judgment, despite the grief that still lived in his bones, despite knowing they came from different worlds that probably couldn't coexist. And now that love was weaponized, turned into fodder for strangers to dissect and dismiss. Their private connection made public spectacle. His feelings transformed into evidence of opportunism. Marcus typed and deleted a dozen responses before settling on, "I need space, please respect that." Victoria's reply came instantly. Okay, but Marcus, this changes nothing about how I feel. When you're ready to talk, I'm here. He didn't respond. Instead, he opened his laptop and began researching what happened when private citizens became public targets. The results weren't encouraging. Once the internet decided you were a villain, redemption became nearly impossible. The narrative would follow him forever, attached to every job application, every background check, every attempt to build a life beyond this moment. The foundation work would become impossible. No one would take him seriously with this scandal hanging over his head. Donors would withdraw. Families needing help would doubt his motives. The entire operation Victoria had built around his credibility would crumble, which meant he needed to leave, walk away cleanly, publicly, before he dragged the foundation down with him. Let Victoria find someone else to run it, someone without tabloid baggage. Protect what mattered most, Emma's future, the foundation's mission, by removing himself from the equation. The decision crystallized with brutal clarity. Marcus pulled out his phone and drafted an email to Andrea, carbon copying Victoria. Effective immediately, I'm resigning from the Sullivan Foundation. Please begin the search for my replacement. I'll coordinate transition over the next 2 weeks. His finger hovered over send. This was the right choice, the only choice that protected everyone involved. So why did it feel like cutting out his own heart? Marcus pressed send before he could change his mind. Victoria's call came within 60 seconds. He let it ring through to voicemail. Her message was tearful, pleading, Marcus, don't do this. Please. We can fight this together. Don't let them win. Don't let me lose you over my mistake. But it wasn't just her mistake anymore. It was the world's verdict, the internet's judgment, the impossible weight of two different realities colliding. Some gaps were too wide to bridge. Marcus silenced his phone completely and went to bed, though sleep seemed as impossible as forgiveness. The next morning, Emma's school called. Marcus answered with dread already forming in his chest. The principal's voice was carefully neutral. Mr. Sullivan, there's been an incident. Can you come in? Marcus arrived at the school 20 minutes later to find Emma sitting in the principal's office, tear-streaked face hidden behind crossed arms. The principal, Miss Rodriguez, gestured Marcus to a chair, her expression sympathetic but firm. Ms. Rodriguez's voice was gentle. Emma was involved in an altercation with several classmates during recess. From what we've gathered, they were teasing her about the news stories. She pushed one of the children. Nobody was hurt, but we have a zero-tolerance policy for physical contact. Marcus felt rage and helplessness war in his chest. What were they saying to her? Ms. Rodriguez hesitated. The children were repeating things they'd heard from their parents, comments about you and Miss Sterling. I won't repeat the specifics, but they were unkind. Emma's voice came out muffled behind her arms. They said Daddy's a gold digger, that he tricked Miss Victoria, that we're going to get rich by lying. She looked up, eyes red and furious. I told them to shut up. They wouldn't, so I pushed Tyler. He deserved it. Marcus's heart shattered. This was what he'd feared. His choices, his association with Victoria, damaging Emma in ways that couldn't be undone. 7 years old and defending her father from accusations she barely understood. He knelt in front of her chair. Emma, I know you were upset, but pushing wasn't the right choice. Emma's jaw set in that stubborn line she'd inherited from him. What was the right choice? Let them say mean things? Let them lie about you? Ms. Rodriguez intervened. Emma, you could have told a teacher. We would have handled it. She looked at Marcus. I'm giving her a warning this time, but any further incidents will result in suspension. And Mr. Sullivan, she paused, choosing words carefully. I understand this is a difficult situation, but whatever's happening in your personal life, please try to shield Emma from the fallout. The children are cruel enough without adult drama fueling their behavior. The implicit criticism stung, even though Marcus knew she was right. He'd failed to protect Emma from this. His connection to Victoria, however genuine, however complicated, had made his daughter a target. Marcus took Emma home early, calling in sick to the foundation. They sat on the couch, Emma curled against his side like she used to when she was smaller. She'd stopped crying but remained silent, picking at a loose thread on her jeans. Finally, she spoke. Are you and Miss Victoria going to stop being friends? Marcus chose honesty over comfort. I don't know, sweetheart. Grown-up friendships are complicated sometimes. Emma's voice was small. Is it because of me? Because I pushed Tyler? Marcus turned her face toward his. No, absolutely not. This has nothing to do with you. Emma's eyes, so much like Sarah's, searched his face. But people are saying mean things. If you stop seeing Miss Victoria, will they stop? The question revealed Emma's 7-year-old logic. Eliminate the problem source. Eliminate the problem. And maybe she was right. Maybe walking away from Victoria would eventually end the speculation. Let the story die from lack of fuel. Maybe protecting Emma required sacrificing whatever fragile thing he and Victoria had been building. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. Mr. Sullivan, this is Catherine Sterling, Victoria's stepmother. I'd like to speak with you. It's important. Can we meet? Marcus stared at the message, unease prickling his spine. He'd heard Victoria mention her stepmother exactly twice, both times with barely concealed distaste. Why would Catherine Sterling want to meet? Against his better judgment, Marcus replied, when and where? Catherine's response came immediately. Today, 3 p.m. Heathman Hotel lobby. I'll be at the corner table. Marcus made arrangements for Emma to stay with a neighbor, then drove downtown with growing apprehension. The Heathman Hotel screamed old money and established power. Marcus felt acutely aware of his worn jeans and flannel shirt as he entered the opulent lobby. Catherine Sterling sat exactly where she'd promised, perfectly coiffed silver hair and jewelry that probably cost more than Marcus's entire wardrobe. She was in her late 50s, but looked 40, the kind of age-defying appearance that required dedicated wealth. Her smile was pleasant and sharp simultaneously, like a well-maintained knife. She gestured to the seat across from her. Mr. Sullivan, thank you for meeting me. Marcus sat warily. What's this about? Catherine didn't waste time on pleasantries. You're destroying my stepdaughter's reputation. I'm here to offer you a way out that benefits everyone involved. Marcus felt his jaw tighten. I'm not destroying anything. I didn't ask for media attention. Catherine's expression suggested she'd expected this response. Intention is irrelevant. Impact is what matters. Victoria's stock price has dropped 8% since this story broke. Board members are questioning her judgment. Major partnerships are stalling, pending clarification of the situation. She leaned forward slightly. You may not have sought this attention, but you're profiting from it regardless. The foundation role, the salary, access to Victoria's resources. From where I sit, you've done quite well for yourself. Marcus's hands curled into fists beneath the table. I earned that position. The foundation work is real. Catherine waved dismissively. I'm sure you believe that, but the optics are terrible. A struggling single father rescued by a billionaire, then immediately hired into a lucrative position at her company? The narrative writes itself. She pulled an envelope from her designer handbag, which is why I'm making you an offer. Marcus didn't reach for the envelope. Not interested. Catherine continued as if he hadn't spoken. $2 million transferred to an account of your choosing. Additionally, a vice president of engineering position at Sterling's Seattle office. Salary of $160,000 annually, full benefits, relocation assistance. You and Emma move to Seattle, start fresh, away from the scrutiny. She paused. All you have to do is end your relationship with Victoria, publicly, cleanly, with a statement explaining you're pursuing other opportunities. The offer hung between them, simultaneously insulting and tempting. $2 million, enough to give Emma everything she deserved. College fund fully loaded, a house they actually owned, financial security for life, and a real job that wouldn't be tainted by scandal, wouldn't require constant defense of his motives. All he had to do was walk away from Victoria. Admit defeat. Let money solve the problem it had created. Marcus met Catherine's eyes. You're trying to buy me off. Catherine's smile didn't waver. I'm offering you what's best for everyone. Victoria will recover once you're gone. She always does. You'll have financial security. Emma will have a stable future. The foundation can hire someone without your baggage. She pushed the envelope closer. This is logic, not cruelty. Sometimes love isn't enough to overcome fundamental incompatibility. Marcus looked at the envelope, at this woman who saw human relationships as problems requiring financial solutions. She wasn't wrong about the incompatibility. His world and Victoria's operated on different rules, valued different things. The past week had proven that bridging the gap might be impossible, but the offer still felt like betrayal. Not just of Victoria, but of himself. The man who'd refused Victoria's initial money, the man who'd insisted on dignity over charity, the man who'd built his entire sense of self on doing what was right rather than what was profitable. Marcus pushed the envelope back. No. Catherine's pleasant expression faltered. Mr. Sullivan, be reasonable. This scandal will follow you forever. Every job application, every relationship, every interaction will be colored by that time you dated a billionaire. You're ensuring Emma grows up as the gold digger's daughter. Is your pride really worth that? The words hit harder than Marcus expected because they articulated his deepest fear. But underneath the fear was something stronger. The memory of Victoria's vulnerability when she'd shared her past. The genuine connection they'd built cooking dinner and teaching Emma. The way she looked at him like he was valuable beyond his utility. Marcus stood. My pride isn't for sale. Neither is my integrity. He turned toward the exit, then looked back. And Catherine? Victoria deserves better than a stepmother who thinks love is a liability to be managed. He walked out before she could respond, heart pounding with adrenaline and something that might have been clarity. He'd been offered an escape, a clean exit with financial security guaranteed, and he'd refused it because Victoria was worth fighting for, because whatever they had deserved a chance to survive, because running away to protect yourself wasn't actually protection, it was just cowardice in disguise. Marcus drove home with purpose crystallizing. He needed to talk to Victoria, needed to figure out if forgiveness was possible, needed to stop letting fear make his decisions. But when he arrived home, Emma was crying on the front steps, the neighbor who'd been watching her standing nearby with a helpless expression. Marcus's stomach dropped as he ran toward them. Emma threw herself at him. Dad, my tablet! Someone sent me messages. Marcus pulled out her tablet with shaking hands. The screen showed a dozen cruel messages from classmates, screenshots of the news stories, memes mocking Marcus and Victoria. Childish cruelty amplified by internet access, the next generation already weaponizing social media. The neighbor, Mrs. Chen, looked apologetic. I'm sorry, she was playing an educational game. I didn't realize she could receive messages. Marcus assured her it wasn't her fault, thanked her, and carried Emma inside. He sat her on the couch and went through the messages systematically, screenshotting everything before blocking the senders. Most were students from her class. A few were from older kids at the school. All were variations on the same theme. Emma's dad was using Victoria for money. Emma's voice came out thick with tears. Dad, are you using Miss Victoria? Marcus felt something inside him crack and bleed. No, sweetheart, I'm not. Emma hiccuped. Then why do people keep saying it? How did you explain adult cynicism to a 7-year-old? How did you make her understand that the world sometimes preferred ugly stories to beautiful ones? That people needed villains to feel superior? That genuine connection scared those who'd never experienced it? Marcus tried. Sometimes people can't believe that good things happen without hidden reasons. They look for explanations that make sense to them, even if those explanations are wrong. Emma wiped her eyes. But it's not fair. Marcus pulled her close. No, it's not. They sat like that until Emma fell asleep against his shoulder, exhausted by emotion. Marcus carried her to bed, then returned to the living room and made a decision he should have made days ago. He packed 2 duffel bags, one with his clothes and essentials, one with Emma's favorites, stuffed animals, books, the photo album with Sarah's pictures. He loaded them into his truck, moving quietly to avoid waking his daughter. Then he went back inside, pulled out his phone, and composed a text to his boss at the warehouse. The job offer had come through 2 days after Victoria's foundation offer, forgotten in the chaos. Maybe they'd still take him. His plan was simple. Grab Emma in the morning, drive to Seattle, find a cheap extended stay motel, start over, away from the media circus. Away from Victoria's complicated world. Away from his mistakes. Marcus made it as far as locking the front door before Emma's voice stopped him cold. Dad, what are you doing? She stood in the hallway in her pajamas, backlit by the nightlight, looking impossibly small and impossibly wise. Marcus's carefully constructed plan dissolved like sugar in rain. His voice came out hoarse. Going away for a little while. We need a fresh start. Emma's face crumpled. You're running away. The accusation landed like a physical blow. I'm protecting you. Emma shook her head, tears starting again. You're giving up. Just like... She stopped, swallowed hard. Just like you gave up on Mom. Marcus felt the world tilt. What? Emma, no, Mom died. That wasn't... Emma's voice rose, fury and hurt mixing. You gave up. When she got sick, you stopped fighting. You just let her go. The words came faster, years of observation tumbling out. You worked all the time so you didn't have to be there. You weren't holding her hand when she died. You were in the hallway crying. The words eviscerated him because they contained truth he'd been avoiding. He had pulled away during Sarah's final weeks, not consciously, not deliberately, but he'd buried himself in work and logistics because watching her die was unbearable. He'd been in the hallway sobbing silently when Sarah had taken her last breath. Emma had been there instead, 7 years old and holding her mother's hand because her father couldn't bear the weight. Marcus dropped to his knees, all strength leaving. Emma, I'm so sorry. Emma walked toward him, still crying but with purpose in her small frame. Mommy told me something. Before she died, she made me promise not to tell you until you needed to hear it. Marcus looked up at his daughter, this child who'd carried a secret for 3 years. What did she say? Emma's voice steadied, becoming an echo of Sarah's strength. She said, don't let Daddy close his heart. Tell him there are still good things in the world. Tell him it's okay to love again. Tell him I want him to be happy. Fresh tears spilled down Emma's cheeks. Miss Victoria is a good thing, Dad. And you're running away because you're scared. But Mommy didn't want you to be scared. She wanted you to be happy. The words broke something in Marcus, some dam he'd built to hold back 3 years of grief and guilt and fear. He pulled Emma into his arms and sobbed, deep, wrenching cries that he'd been suppressing since Sarah's funeral. Emma held him, this tiny person who'd somehow become stronger than he'd ever been. When Marcus could breathe again, he pulled back and looked at his daughter's face. Sarah's eyes, Sarah's determination, Sarah's capacity for love even in the face of loss. His voice came out raw. You're right, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for running, for giving up, for... He couldn't finish, but Emma understood. She wiped her eyes. So we're not leaving? Marcus shook his head. No, we're staying, and I'm going to fix this. He smoothed her hair back. Go back to bed, sweetheart. I have a call to make. My. Emma hugged him once more, fierce and tight, then padded back to her room. Marcus heard her door close softly. He pulled out his phone with shaking hands and dialed Victoria's number. It rang 4 times before her sleepy voice answered. Marcus? The sound of her saying his name nearly undid him again. I'm sorry for shutting you out, for running, for... He took a breath. Can I come over? We need to talk. Victoria's voice sharpened, became fully alert. Yes, now, please. Marcus texted Mrs. Chen, asked if Emma could sleep there for a few hours. She agreed immediately. Sweet woman, probably watching the drama unfold and wanting to help. Marcus transferred his sleeping daughter into the neighbor's care, then drove across the city as dawn began breaking over the eastern hills. Victoria met him in the elevator, barefoot and beautiful in sweatpants and a t-shirt. His shirt, Marcus realized, the one she'd worn that first morning. Her face was makeup-free, eyes red from crying or lack of sleep, or both. She looked more real than he'd ever seen her. They stood facing each other in her pristine living room, the city waking behind the floor-to-ceiling windows. Neither seemed to know how to start. Finally, Victoria spoke. I hired someone to destroy the PI report. Every copy, and I fired the investigator. Not that it matters now, but... Her voice broke slightly. I violated your trust. I reduced you to data. I can't take that back, but I need you to know I understand why you left. Marcus stepped closer. I didn't leave. I tried to, but he smiled despite everything. My daughter is wiser than I am. She told me something tonight. Something Sarah said before she died. Victoria waited, barely breathing. Marcus continued. Sarah told Emma to tell me, when I needed to hear it, that I should stop closing my heart, that there are still good things in the world, that she wanted me to be happy. He closed the remaining distance between them. You're a good thing, Victoria. Maybe the best thing that's happened to me since Sarah. And I've been too scared to admit it, too guilty, too worried that loving someone new meant forgetting someone I lost. Victoria's tears flowed freely now. Marcus, he cut her off gently. Let me finish. You made a mistake. You investigated me because trust is hard for you. I get that now. It doesn't erase the hurt, but I understand it. He cupped her face in his hands, and I made mistakes too. I shut you out instead of talking. I let fear control me. I almost ran away tonight because I was scared of what loving you might cost. Well, Victoria's hands came up to cover his. What changed your mind? Marcus's smile was genuine this time. A 7-year-old girl who's braver than both of us, who reminded me that love is worth fighting for, that running away doesn't protect anyone. It just ensures everyone loses. Victoria's voice came out barely above a whisper. I love you. I should have said it before the investigation, before everything exploded. But I was scared too, scared you'd think I was trying to buy your feelings, scared you didn't feel the same way. Marcus leaned in until their foreheads touched. I love you too. I've been falling for you since you stood in my kitchen wearing my shirt, refusing to leave until you'd made your point. He pulled back slightly. But Victoria, if we do this, we do it honestly. No more investigations. No more secrets. We talk, we fight, we figure it out together. Because I can't survive another betrayal. Victoria nodded emphatically. No more secrets, I swear. Complete transparency. She paused. Even when it's scary? Marcus kissed her forehead, especially when it's scary. They stood like that as sunrise painted the room gold. Two damaged people choosing vulnerability over safety, connection over isolation. Eventually they moved to the couch, still holding each other, and talked until the words ran out, and all that remained was the comfortable silence of two souls finally aligned. Victoria's phone rang around 9 a.m. She glanced at the caller ID. It's my PR director. The board wants a statement about us. Marcus felt tension return. What kind of statement? Victoria's jaw set in determination. The truth that we're together, that I don't care what people think, that my personal life isn't subject to board approval. She looked at him, but only if you're comfortable going public. I know the attention has been hell for you and Emma. Marcus thought about Catherine's offer, about the easy exit he'd refused, about Emma telling him to fight for happiness, about Sarah's final wish being granted through her daughter's voice. He squeezed Victoria's hand. Let's do it. Together. Victoria called her PR director back. Schedule a press conference today if possible. I'm making a statement. The press conference happened at 2 p.m. in the Sterling Dynamics main auditorium. Every major outlet showed up, cameras ready, journalists primed for corporate damage control. Marcus stood backstage with Emma. Mrs. Chen had brought her over, sensing this was important, and tried to calm his racing heart. Victoria appeared beside them, polished and powerful in her CEO suit, but her hand found his immediately. Ready? Marcus looked down at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. He looked at Victoria, who'd become his future somehow. He looked at himself reflected in the makeup mirror, a regular guy in borrowed confidence, about to face judgment alongside a woman worth $800 million. He met Victoria's eyes. Ready. They walked out together, fingers interlaced. The camera flashes were blinding. Victoria approached the podium, Marcus beside her, Emma standing slightly behind. The questions started immediately, a cacophony of accusation disguised as inquiry. Victoria raised one hand and silence fell. Thank you all for coming. I have a brief statement, after which I'll take questions. She glanced at Marcus once, drew strength from his presence, then faced the cameras directly. Over the past 2 weeks, There's been significant speculation about my relationship with Marcus Sullivan. I'm here today to clarify some things. She paused, gathering herself. Marcus saved my life during an accident. That part you know. What you don't know is that he refused every attempt I made to thank him financially. He pushed my money back across the table and told me generosity isn't about debt or transactions. It's about doing what's right because someone needs help. Her voice grew stronger. That interaction changed me, reminded me why I started my company. Not to accumulate wealth, but to help people who'd been where I'd been, lost, forgotten, dismissed as disposable. Victoria's gaze swept the audience. So yes, I hired Marcus to run the Sullivan Foundation. Not because I was grateful, but because he was the most qualified person I knew. Someone who understood struggle, who had credibility with the communities we serve, who wouldn't let bureaucracy or ego interfere with actually helping people. She paused. And yes, over the past 2 months, I've fallen in love with him. Not because he saved me from a burning car, because he saved me from a lonely life where money was the only measure of worth. The room erupted with questions. Victoria ignored them, turned to Marcus instead. Her voice dropped, became intimate despite the microphones. I made mistakes. I investigated you instead of trusting you. I overstepped boundaries with Emma. I reduced your life to risk assessment because I was scared of being vulnerable. She reached into her jacket pocket, pulled out a small jewelry box. But you taught me something essential. You taught me that character matters more than comfort. That dignity isn't negotiable. That real connection requires risking real hurt. Victoria opened the box, revealing a simple ring, no diamonds, no ostentation, just elegant platinum. Then, in front of 300 people and a dozen cameras, she lowered herself to one knee. Marcus's breath stopped. This wasn't, she couldn't be. Victoria's voice was clear and steady. Marcus Sullivan, you make me believe in humanity again. You make me want to be better than my worst instincts. You make me feel like the scared kid I used to be might deserve love after all. Her eyes shimmered with tears that refused to fall. So I'm asking you, in front of all these witnesses, because I want the world to know I choose you. Will you marry me? The auditorium fell completely silent. Every camera focused on Marcus's face, capturing his shock and joy and terror in equal measure. Somewhere behind him, Emma whispered, "Say yes, Dad." Marcus looked at Victoria, this impossible woman kneeling before him, offering herself completely, risking public humiliation if he refused. He thought about Sarah's final words, about Emma's bravery, about the man he wanted to be rather than the man fear had made him. He pulled Victoria to her feet, took the ring from the box, slid it onto his own finger because traditional roles were overrated anyway. Then he pulled her close and kissed her, deep and thorough and completely inappropriate for a corporate press conference. The cameras went wild. Questions exploded. But Marcus heard only Victoria's soft laugh against his lips, felt only her hands gripping his shirt like she'd never let go, knew only that he'd just said yes to the scariest and best decision of his life. When they finally broke apart, Victoria's CEO composure was shattered, replaced by genuine joy. She turned to the press. I believe that answers your questions. We're together. We're getting married. And the foundation will continue its work because the mission matters more than tabloid speculation. She looked at Marcus. Anything to add? Marcus stepped to the microphone, aware of Emma beaming behind them, aware of history being written in real time. Yeah, one thing. He faced the cameras directly. You can question my motives. You can speculate about my financial situation. You can reduce our relationship to transactions and cynicism, but you can't change the truth. He found Victoria's hand again. Love isn't about what you can buy or what you can get. It's about choosing someone every day, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. He paused. And I choose her every single time. The questions resumed, but Victoria gestured to her PR director that they were done. She led Marcus and Emma off stage, away from the chaos, into a quiet hallway where reality could catch up with them. Emma launched herself at both of them. You're getting married. I'm going to have a mom. Then more quietly, glancing at Marcus, is that okay? To call her mom? Victoria knelt down eye to eye with Emma. Only if you want to. No pressure. We can figure out what feels right as we go. Emma considered this seriously, then nodded. I think maybe later, when I'm ready, but I like knowing I can. Victoria pulled Emma into a hug, and Marcus watched his daughter and his future wife holding each other and felt something unlock in his chest. 3 years of grief didn't disappear. Sarah's memory didn't fade. But room appeared for new love alongside the old, space for joy that didn't erase past pain. They left through a back exit, avoiding the press still gathered out front. Victoria's driver took them to Marcus's house, humble and small and home. They ordered pizza, let Emma pick the movie, spent the evening like a normal family rather than tabloid subjects. And when Emma finally fell asleep between them on the couch, full of pepperoni and happiness, Marcus and Victoria looked at each other over her sleeping form and smiled. 2 months later, they married in a small chapel with 20 guests who actually mattered. No press, no spectacle, just Emma in a simple white dress, Marcus in a suit he had bought himself, Victoria in an elegant gown that cost less than her usual shoes. Judge Merrick, who'd officiated Sarah's funeral 3 years prior, presided with misty eyes. Emma stood between them during the ceremony, hands held by both, the connection binding all three. When Judge Merrick asked if they took each other, Marcus and Victoria answered in unison, "We do." The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise. Emma cheered. The small gathering applauded. And Marcus felt Sarah's presence, not as a ghost but as a blessing, her final wish granted through impossible circumstances and everyday miracles. At the reception, held in Victoria's penthouse with catering from Emma's favorite restaurant, Marcus pulled his daughter aside. "You okay with all this?" Emma hugged him tight. "I'm happy, Dad. Really happy. And I think Mom is too." Marcus kissed the top of her head, throat tight with emotion. "Yeah, kiddo, I think she is." 5 years passed with surprising ease. The foundation thrived under Marcus's direction, helping thousands of families navigate impossible choices. Victoria remained CEO, but delegated enough to be present at Emma's soccer games and science fairs. They bought a modest house in the suburbs. Victoria's choice, wanting family space over penthouse isolation, and filled it with noise and life. Emma grew into a remarkable 12-year-old, winning national recognition for her science project on sustainable energy. At the awards ceremony, she thanked her parents, both of them, and the mother she'd lost who taught her that love didn't end just because life did. The old truck Marcus had driven for 15 years finally died. But instead of replacing it, Victoria suggested they restore it together. They spent weekends in the garage teaching Emma about engines and persistence, the vehicle becoming a monument to where they'd started. One evening, sitting on their back porch while Emma did homework inside, Victoria leaned against Marcus's shoulder. "Do you ever regret it, choosing this over quiet anonymity?" Marcus thought about the question seriously. "Sometimes, when the press still digs up old stories, when people make assumptions." He turned to face her. "But then I remember what Emma said about good things being worth fighting for. And I can't imagine a version of my life without you in it." Oh, Victoria's eyes glistened. "Even knowing all my flaws? All the ways I'm still learning how to be part of a family?" Marcus kissed her gently, especially then, because perfect is boring, but growing together, that's beautiful. They sat in comfortable silence as stars appeared overhead. Inside, Emma's laughter rang out at something on her computer. The Foundation's annual report sat on the coffee table, documenting another successful year. Marcus's workshop in the garage held projects in various states of completion. Victoria's home office was full of corporate strategy that she'd tackle tomorrow. It wasn't the life either of them had imagined. Marcus had pictured struggling forever or not at all, no middle ground. Victoria had assumed loneliness was the price of success. Both had been wrong, because sometimes rescue wasn't a one-time event. Sometimes it was choosing someone every morning. Sometimes it was building a life from mismatched pieces that somehow fit perfectly. Sometimes it was a 7-year-old girl with her mother's wisdom, reminding two broken adults that hearts don't close permanently. They just wait for someone brave enough to reopen them. Marcus squeezed Victoria's hand. "Thank you." She looked at him quizzically. "For what?" His smile was pure contentment. for wearing my shirt that first morning, for refusing to leave, for being stubborn enough to fight for this when I was too scared to try. Victoria laughed, that warm sound that still surprised him with its genuineness. Thank you for pulling me from a burning car, and for showing me that dignity matters more than dollars, and for giving me a family when I'd forgotten what family meant. Emma called from inside. Are you guys being sappy again? Because dinner's ready and it's getting cold. They stood together, hands clasped, and walked back into their home, their real home, built on honesty and hard-won trust in the kind of love that survived investigation reports and media storms and all the ways the world tried to prove it couldn't exist. 2 months later, they married in a small chapel with 20 guests who actually mattered. Emma stood between them during the ceremony, hands held by both, the connection binding all three. When Judge Merrick asked if they took each other, Marcus and Victoria answered in unison, "We do." The kiss was soft and sweet and full of promise. Emma cheered. The small gathering applauded. Marcus felt Sarah's presence, not as a ghost, but as a blessing. Her final wish granted through impossible circumstances and everyday miracles. At the reception, Marcus pulled his daughter aside. You okay with all this? Emma hugged him tight. I'm happy, Dad. Really happy. And I think Mom is too. Marcus kissed the top of her head. Yeah, kiddo, I think she is. Yeah. 5 years slipped by with surprising ease. The foundation thrived, helping thousands of families navigate impossible choices. Victoria remained CEO, but carved out time for Emma's soccer games and science fairs. They bought a modest house in the suburbs, Victoria's choice, wanting family space over penthouse isolation. Emma grew into a remarkable 12-year-old. At a National Science Awards ceremony, she thanked both her parents and the mother she'd lost, who taught her that love didn't end just because life did. One Saturday evening, they sat together on their back porch. Emma was inside doing homework. The foundation's annual report lay on the coffee table, documenting another successful year. Marcus's workshop in the garage held half-finished projects. Victoria's laptop sat closed on the kitchen counter. Corporate strategy could wait until Monday. Victoria leaned against Marcus's shoulder. Do you ever regret it, choosing this over quiet anonymity? Marcus thought about the question seriously. Sometimes, when old stories resurface, when people make assumptions, he turned to face her. But then I remember what Emma said, that good things are worth fighting for, and I can't imagine life without you in it. Victoria's eyes glistened. Even knowing all my flaws, all the ways I'm still learning, Marcus kissed her gently, especially then. Perfect is boring. Growing together, that's beautiful. Emma's voice called from inside, dinner's ready, and it's getting cold. They stood, hands clasped, and walked back into their home. Messy and complicated, and absolutely worth every difficult moment. The old truck Marcus had restored sat in the garage, a monument to where they'd started. The shirt Victoria had borrowed that first morning hung in their closet, never worn again, but never forgotten. Some things couldn't be bought. Some connections transcended circumstance, and some rescues were mutual. Each person saving the other from the prisons they'd built from past pain. Marcus squeezed Victoria's hand as they reached the door. Every day he chose this, chose her, chose the life they'd fought to create. Every single time,